This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, but rocking a beautiful Toronto background behind me. I do plan to make a couple trips to Toronto this year, hopefully for Fan Expo and Frightmare in the Falls, but that's not till later. In the meantime, I have a my first guest since April 21st. I've just, between working, and I work two cleaning jobs, between working and sleeping, uh, I just haven't had anything scheduled. But Shawn Doucette, who is somebody from Moncton, New Brunswick, had messaged me and he said, "Would you like to interview this gentleman that I'm about to have on today?" And you know what? I said, absolutely. 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 I'll have him on. He's part of Cobra Kai, which I don't watch television, so I have actually not watched the show. However, I know it's very popular and I'm very familiar with the Karate Kid. So um, we're going to discuss that with this fella and his independent films, and we'll probably make fun of Shawn Doucette as well. Folks, I give you the absolutely awesome Kris D. Roberts. How do you do, Kris?
Doing good today, Greg. I want to thank you for having me on. Special shout out to Shawn Doucette, that little fellow, for recommending and getting us connected for this interview. I appreciate you guys both.
Yeah. So, what did you have to do to get connected to me? Did you have to do shout outs for that unicorn, that stuffed unicorn he has? Yeah, you know what I'm
What
talking about.
is it, Pouncy or something like that? He calls it his little
I
teddy bear form.
I don't know, but between him and Troy Froman, watching those, I got to get those two on together because I'm going to tell you, I don't want to be the referee. It's like two nuts in a bowl, and they both have their own sidekicks.
Yeah,
Actually, oh
I've
my,
appreciated
oh,
I've
absolutely,
appreciated
absolutely. Does he send you
I've
pictures of
appreciated Sean.
unicorn?
I see him on his social media, and I just wonder how much a unicorn can bench press.
He, at the end of, I think it was 2021, I think, New Year's Eve, he wanted me to have unicorn on my show. And my first response was, like, I never turn guests down. And I was like, I was going to turn that down. And I got to thinking to myself, how often do I see people interview the Muppets? And then I got thinking even deeper. I'm going to make this my most crass, offensive interview I've ever done. And let's just say I asked Shawn Doucette a lot of questions about what he does with that stuffed animal. And you know
Oh
what?
God!
Yeah. Hey, he asked for it. I've actually never met Shawn, but he lives in the same province, and we've both been part of a number of James Balsamo films, which how James Balsamo got two of us from this friggin' nobody knows about province in Canada in his films. That's a miracle that I don't even think James can figure out. But at any rate, how did you come to encounter Shawn?
Well, I've been in the film industry here in the United States for about 5 years.
Mhm.
I started in 2019 with my first background role on Sweet Girl, a Netflix production filmed in Pittsburgh. And long story short, I got to know Shawn just through the network. You know,
Were you
getting
embarrassed?
to know, no, kind of inspired to be honest with you at first, but then I began to wonder.
Oh, you know what? He'll listen to this and laugh. He.
I'm sure
Yeah,
good-spirited
yeah. There's
fellow.
there's nothing we can say about him that he's gonna take offense to. So, but anyway,
In the
yeah.
film industry, there's a camaraderie.
Mhm.
So, I'm originally from the Northeast United States, close enough to Canada, so Shawn and I, we kind of have, we live parallel lives. He's working the film industry. Obviously, you do a little bit in the film industry, and we just meshed. It's hard to explain. It's like a brotherhood.
With a unicorn thrown in for good measure.
How about it? Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Well, I would like to get some of your background. Like you said, you started in 2019, just before the pandemic, though. But nonetheless, give us some of your background and what got you interested in being part of the film industry.
Well, as I was saying, in 2019, I was on the internet, surfing around, and I seen inquiries for extra background positions for a film called Sweet Girl, filming in Pittsburgh, starring Jason Momoa, you know. So I was like, what the heck? So I filled out the submission, I sent it in, and they got a hold of me. So at that point, I decided, okay, it was a weekend filming, so I was able to. I worked full time, working full time. I was able to just get away for the weekend. So I made a weekend trip, but I got an Airbnb, got my best Pittsburgh stuff together, and I went down. We filmed at PNC Park, the stadium where the Pittsburgh Pirates play, and we also filmed on Roberto Clemente Bridge for an excellent action scene where Jason Momoa is he's running and there's choppers and all kinds of good stuff. But anyway, so it was a very action packed experience, Greg. And at that point, I knew this was something I wanted to pursue the rest of my life, if that makes sense. At that time I was 45, 44, 45 years old. And it was like, wow, this is a piece of life I've never, who hasn't found themselves in front of a screen watching a film, even watching a cartoon and just being inspired, you know, to pursue that life. And once I got on set in 2019, filmed for that weekend, I came back home, and there was so much action and excitement on the movie set. And actors and filmmakers alike can understand when you take that out of the equation, you suffer somewhat of a withdrawal. So here I was, back to the grind of daily work, and just having had my first film experience, I was like, I want to do this. So I began to put my ducks in a row in 2019 into early 2020 when the pandemic hit, like you said. Pennsylvania, where I was living at the time, went into lockdown. Everybody was social distancing, masks. Businesses
Mhm.
were closing, shutting down, some closing down for good. I worked an additional month. I got laid off from my job, and I made a life changing decision that I was going to move back to Florida, where I grew up between Florida and Pennsylvania. So I always had a foothold in Florida, if you will. So I decided I'd go back to Florida and pursue films. And again, that was 2019. And this 2025 returned after 5 years. I started with one film credit, and I've since amassed 39 total film, television, TV, and music video commercial or credits. So on average, over 5 years, I've worked and been to one degree or another. I've been on set an average of 8 projects a year over 5 years' time. So, and all working a full time job. So I finally decided, a friend of mine, Shawn Thompson, I'd like to thank Shawn Thompson and congratulate him on his success.
Yeah, I know
He was
that
cast.
name.
He was cast on Cobra Kai, and I was celebrating with him because I'm big on networking. I do a lot on social media, probably more than I should. Who knows? Anyway, I was congratulating Shawn, and it was a day or two later, Shawn Thompson sent me a link. And, between Sweet Girl in Pittsburgh and Cobra Kai in Atlanta, I had been, like I said, I had been on numerous independent small films where I played supporting roles. I had dialogue. I've been in scenes. I've studied scenes. I've studied scripts. I've learned how to build character. Saying that to say, because there's a negative connotation about background actors becoming actors, and it's never really made sense to me. You know, I, there's a lot of talent that comes out of the background, if you will, and begins to forge their way in the industry. So I think it's a discredit to tell background actors that now I understand in certain lights that doesn't carry weight as far as, acting experience, if you will. But every time you're on a film set, anyway, getting away from that rat hole, I applied for Cobra Kai. It was like, one of them 3-pointers at the buzzers for me. I was like, you know what, I'm going to shoot my shot. I I had been in Florida for the 4.5 years and had begun to, like I was saying, doing numerous projects. But this was a big production. It was Netflix, Sony Pictures. Thank you guys both, indeed. Uh, so I shot my shot, and it was 3 or 4 days later, the phone rang. I was on my way home from my full-time job, and I could barely make the phone call. I could barely understand what she was saying, but it said Atlanta, Georgia on the caller ID. They called me to come on board Cobra Kai season 6. I was elated, and it was all through networking with people like Shawn, everybody along the way, my Florida film family. I always like to share that part. In fact, there's a lot of people we meet in this journey that I met in my journey, and I accredit each and every one of them of bringing and allowing me to be where I'm at today. Which, I mean, yeah, I was only background on Cobra Kai, but I was on Cobra Kai. I was sensei for Team France. Hung out with William Zabka, Brandon H. Lee, Martin Cove, Ralph Macchio, Cholo. The list goes on and on. I was there, and so long story short, we filmed Cobra Kai. It was about a month and a half. It was sometimes a week turnaround. Well, it started. I think the first turnaround was 2 weeks, and then after that, filming blocks begin to fall into 1 week turnarounds, which turned into us filming like 5 or 6 weeks on set. So I'm traveling back and forth from Gainesville, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia, which is a 5-hour trip. I'm an automotive detailer by trade, a recondition specialist. I make cars resellable for dealerships. I was working under a contract. So basically, I was able to make my own schedule. So I'd make enough money detailing cars to pay for my accommodations the next week in Atlanta. And then I'd come back from Atlanta and wait on Netflix checks to pay my bills, and then return with what I made that week. It was a lot of juggling, man. It was a lot of sacrifice. But leading up to Cobra Kai, all of the things that I had done along the way, it was like, okay, so this was the goal. I didn't realize it in 2019, but here in 2024, last year, I thought to myself, I achieved what I've set out to do. Okay. The 39 credits, 38 minus Cobra Kai, the amount of phenomenal people I've met, the networking opportunities. I've worked with Damian Chapa. I had my first fight scene on Mexican Connection opposite Damian Chapa. Now, Damian Chapa, everyone knows as Miklo from Blood In, Blood Out. It's a 90s cult classic. I watched it as a teenager. I'm having my first fight scene with an actor I watched as a teenager. I've been in a music video with 13 million views, numerous million view music videos. Jay Wheeler. And in fact, Jay Wheeler's video that I'm in showed on the jumbotron in New York City, and my feature, I was featured in that video in New York City, so on in Times Square. That was phenomenal. But yeah, it's just been, and then being on set of Cobra Kai, being a Cobra or Karate Kid. I was 7 years old when I watched Daniel Son and Mr. Miyagi, and continue on to part two, part three, Terry Silver, Thomas Ian Griffith, Martin Cove as John Kreese. I grew up with watching these guys on film, and to be able to have the honor and privilege to grace the same stage as them was, I'll carry that with me the rest of my days. I'm part of the Miyagi verse. I'm part of the Karate Kid saga now. When I was a 7-year old kid, I dreamed of that, and here we are. So, and saying that to say, I returned back to Pennsylvania after the Cobra Kai work. I went and did an independent project in Albany, Georgia, with my friend Austin Rhodes, Prestigious Entertainment. Had a great time on set there. And once my film obligations begin to wind down, I decided the end of last year, my mother returned to Pennsylvania after 10 to 15 years in Southwest Florida. She returned home. So now my mother, my father, all my family is up in this region in Northwest Pennsylvania. And I was on Cobra Kai. I achieved the goal I set out to achieve. So I decided I'd come home and I would focus on physical fitness. I train martial arts. I'm a very novice Tai Chi practitioner. However, I am a practitioner, you know, and it's like I'm back home. I'm actually back in the saddle at the job I had when I had my first film experience in 2019. Shout out to Allegheny Toyota, Mike Guth, Franklin, Pennsylvania, brought me back on board. I'm doing what I love, Greg. I'm detailing cars. I'm cracking jokes on Shawn Doucette when I see him with his muscles on Facebook. I'm just having a good time. I'm staying plugged into the network, continuing to look for film opportunities. There's a lot of stuff going on around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Wheeling, West Virginia. Of course, we got Jersey, New York. So, the sky is the limit. It's like I am back where I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. And it's hard as an actor because an actor would think that, okay, I was in Florida, I filmed in Atlanta. What's next? What's above that? Where are we going? LA, New York? No, we're going to Franklin, Pennsylvania for a spell. It's all, I believe I'm on the path. And sometimes it seems like you get a little vertigo. You're like, what's going on? This don't seem right. But then you slow it down and you look at what you're doing. I'm continuing to network in the film industry. I'm doing podcast interviews. I'm staying connected to Cobra Kai fans, being invited to Comic Cons. Shout out to Three Rivers Comic Con in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Invited me to come as a complimentary guest, not as a panelist yet, but to be a guest. Just staying networking with people of influence, continuing to find my niche in the film industry, looking for larger roles, larger productions, and just staying connected to people that love the industry.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would have been 12 years old in 1984 when Karate Kid came out, and I remember it. And it's funny because William Zabka went from that film and he did Back to School, where he played another very, very ignorant individual. He's good at playing that, but I heard that in person he's quite a nice guy.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very professional. Uh, he's compassionate. He embodies everything that someone like Mother Teresa would. So when you see him on screen, it's like, how they pull that off. You know what I mean? He's got a big personality. He's a great person. You know, I remember William Zabka on set, and I have a photo of William and I. However, I didn't get a chance to get a photo of Ralph and myself, but there was this one moment when we were filming a scene on the karate mat, and it was the melee scene where everybody starts fighting. Season six, Blood In Blood Out episode, I believe. And I looked over my shoulder, man, and I see Ralph Macchio, and it's just like so surreal. It's like, oh my God, I'm here. You know, I am here. So in that moment, in that very moment that I had that feeling, of course, one side of my brain is like, oh my God, I hope I'm in the shot when they get him in the shot. You know what I mean? Let us both be in the same screen together, which happened a few times with different actors, you know, Ralph included. And I had an opportunity. We had cut, the director yelled cut on that tape, and Ralph and I were in just in a vicinity of one another, and we locked eyes, Greg, and I reached out to shake his hand, and he met me with a firm handshake with a smile on his face. I looked him right in his eyes. I was like, hey, man, thanks for framing my childhood, you know? And he's like, with a big smile, he said, thanks for being here. So, you know, both him, William, Ralph, Martin Cove, Thomas Ian Griffith, all very professional. I learned a lot on that set. We'll just say that. You know, I watched how they operate. They're very professional, very kind and courteous individuals. And there were numerous times, numerous days when we were after the day, the martini cut. You know, at the end of the day, it's martini. And they stuck around, you know, after working 13 hours and such, and stuck around and took pictures with fans, signed autographs. You know, very very cordial people. So all around, it was a great opportunity. Would I would absolutely work with him again if I was given such an opportunity, you know. And it just, I learned, like I said, I learned a lot about my my position in the film industry. William Zabka said there's no such thing as a small role. Everybody on the film set is important, you know. And I got a hold of that because a lot of times, as a background or as an extra on larger productions, you kind of do carry that intimidation. It's like, oh, I'm replaceable. You know, they can put anybody in this spot. And then, like I said, William Zabka comes along and says, no such thing as a small part. We're all important there. So just being a part, huge honor, huge honor. You know,
Um, I really like the first Karate Kid. What did you? I haven't seen all of them, but what did you think of the sequels and the remake?
they were well, obviously worthy. You know, I liked the way the story went along. One through three, I believe, were very finely intertwined. Um, the rest of course, I like the other ones as well. You know, looking forward to Karate Kid Legends, big time. Been watching that trailer, man. It's such a fire trailer. It's, you know, it's the embodiment as close to possible, or as close as possible, to the original 1984 Karate Kid. And I look forward to it. I believe it's going to be masterful writing. It's going to be very good storytelling. Uh, Jackie Chan, him
I
being
like Jackie
involved,
Chan.
you know,
I
it's
mean,
just
he's filling some big boots there, but let's face it, if you're going to get somebody, Jackie
there you
Chan,
go.
yeah.
I got chills. I got chills. You know, I can just see, for Jackie Chan to say he wants to apply Miyagi to his student, you know, it ties it all together, and I believe it's going to be a very powerful story. You know, look forward to it. Karate Kid Legends, May 30th. Check it out.
There you go. May 30th. Yeah, that's the birthday of Jake the Snake Roberts, I believe, too.
How about
There
that?
you go. Um, anyway, you mentioned Comic Cons. I started doing the conventions in 2017. when actress Lisa Langlois invited me to my first convention, and I've done a few. I was never there as a guest. I show up and give out my business card and see who I could wrangle to bring in on my show, and I did Chiller last year, and that was my first one in the States. But I did one Toronto Comic Con. You said you've done Comic Con. How many conventions have you done, and what were your experiences like?
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't been a panel. I was a panelist on one Comic Con. It was in Miami, Florida, Miami Convention Center. The character was Hero Bot. The name of the Comic Con was Hero Hype. It was, I think it had about a 10-year running. You know, they had been putting the show on for 10 years and it had grown in popularity and such. I accepted a gig with a production company online, which again, we have the internet, we networked, we get connected. Anyway, I found myself connected to this gentleman in Miami, and he brought me on to be his character that he had created, Hero Bot. It turns out when I got there, the first thing they did, they threw me a spandex suit, and I because we were communicating, and I was like, "What to expect here?" He's like, "Oh, picture Iron Man, you know, a character like Iron Man." So I was like, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to go be an Iron Man fella or whatever, you know." So I get over there. We started with the spandex uniform, and then we start putting on this costume. It was made of mostly styrofoam, but it was, you know, it was all detailed out. And I put it on, and it felt kind of good. It looked good. I was Hero Bot. I was the main feature character of this Comic Con, and there were thousands of people there. So I took hundreds and hundreds of pictures, if you will. The headset was equipped with LED lights. I have bad eyes as it is, so I couldn't have my glasses on. And I got these LED lights, so I was probably the only superhero in history that needed a guide. But anyway, so I didn't bump into people. People, oh, this way, that way. Anyway, it was a long day. It was a hot suit. It was a pleasant experience because at first, I'll be honest with you, Greg, I wasn't gonna do the gig. But first of all, I want to, in the film industry, integrity is a big thing. I couldn't put this guy on and say, yeah, I'll take the role, get there day of the show and back out. That just would be extremely unprofessional. And as I sat and I discussed while we're putting the costume on, and I'm in misery, man. I'm sweating bullets. I got this bodysuit on, but I'm listening to this guy tell me the story, his passion, what he's trying to do with the suit I'm wearing, the spirit of that suit, if you will, what he's doing. Well, PBS was there. He was pitching this character for a pilot to be on PBS. So what it turned out, if PBS would have, could have, should have, I don't know if they even did pick it up, I would have been the face of this character. You see, so there was a lot of good things, and I was glad I stuck around because that's one thing I do like to pride myself on is if somebody's passionate, I'm going to get behind them and help them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And match up passion, match up energy, and help them strive to. So that I was in that spirit, even though I was hot, sweaty, and miserable. I was in the spirit of support. Plus, they paid, obviously, they paid me. But anyway, so fast forward, that was probably in 22 or 23, 2022, 2023. Fast forward after my participation in Cobra Kai, I began to email these Comic Cons to see about being a panelist,
Mm-hmm.
at their show. It's probably unheard of for a background actor to try to put themselves in a position for such. But I'm that type of person, unheard of. I don't pay attention to that. I think outside of the box. I like to talk about you can't get into the kingdom if you're not willing to knock on palace doors. So these unheard of things, these unorthodox things, I love going after them, So like I say, I start sending emails to be a guest panelist, and I actually got accepted to be in a Tampa Bay Comic Con as a panelist, but I relocated back to Pennsylvania. The show was in August. So I've reached out to a couple shows here. Again, Three Rivers MegaCon. Shout out to them for inviting me, not as a panelist, but as a guest, as a complimentary guest. Looking forward to being able to go down there and network. And there's numerous things going on with Cobra Kai. There's spinoffs. I'm getting plugged into casting directors and agencies here in the Northeast. And sometimes, and you can ask Shawn Doucette, you can ask Johnny Depp, whoever, any actor. This is part of the process, man. I read a post and it said it takes at least 5 years to become an overnight sensation, or to have some sort of influence. It takes time to build that, Greg, and that's where I'm at right now. I liken my position right now to anybody that grows gardens or vegetables or fruits. You germinate a seed, you put it in like a wet paper towel, you water it, and you put it up in a dark place, and it germinates. It brings forth new life. It's kind of like where I'm at in my life right now, one day at a time. I'm watering that seed. Every once in a while, I'm checking it to see if anything's breaking out yet. And lo and behold, such is life. That is the way I'm nurturing this part of my journey. Not looking at the downside. I'm no longer in an urban area. I'm no longer connected to the Southeast market. No, I'm in the Northeast market now. The Northeast market has big opportunities as well. And I'm going to knock, knock, knock until they open the door. And then in the meantime, I'm going to continue to build and make myself a marketable resource or an asset to each production I apply myself to, if you will. And that's why I'm grateful for the amount of credits I got over the past 5 years. I've been so blessed to be on 39 film sets, and I've been able to learn. I've gathered a little here, a little there, and I've put it in my toolbox, and I took it. I've worked with Jeremy Meeks. I'm gonna give Jeremy Meeks a shout out. Secret Society Part 2, Part 3. I play a disabled prison inmate. But lo and behold, on Secret Society 2, I said to Jeremy Meeks, I says, "Hey, you got any advice for a new actor?" And he's like, this, that, and third. And fast forward 6 months, I'm on a movie set again. There's Jeremy Meeks again. I get to go tell him it's working, you know? So I run over there. I was like, hey, it takes him a minute. He's famous. I'm not. Hey, yeah, good to see you again, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward another year. Within 18 months or so, I was on 3 film sets with Jeremy Meeks. Appreciate you, Jeremy Meeks. Thanks for the inspiration. Myasha Productions, Secret Society 2 and 3. Privileged to be a part of that. Grateful to have been able to aid in casting that as well, bringing people in. It's just that whole lifestyle, man. It's really exciting. It's high charged, and you meet a lot of great people, and I'm glad I'm on this journey. I'm excited for what tomorrow may hold. And I'm just gonna keep knocking, man. Even if Cobra Kai is the greatest thing that ever happens in my career, I'm okay with it, because of everything I've been a part of and the people I've met. I'm very content, but at the same time, I'm striving as well because when I was on Cobra Kai, I committed to Cobra Kai. I told my job I need a week off to travel to Atlanta. They're good because, like I said, I was a contractor. 3-4 days later, my phone's going nuts. My agent's hitting me up. Shout out to Ed Arenas. Ed Arenas, casting director of Bad Boys 4, called my phone asking me to come be on Bad Boys 4. I had to decline because I was so spread thin. you know, Atlanta's 5 hours one way, Miami's 5 hours the other way, and I only had enough money, and I had already committed to the one, so I had to decline. Do you know how hard it was to decline
I
such a
bet.
great production? But
I
again,
bet.
my integrity was there. I committed to Cobra Kai. I love Cobra Kai. I love the Miyagi verse. I love Karate Kid. But I also have a lot of respect and high esteem for the Bad Boys franchise as well. I mean, so I was torn. But it's to cope with that feeling. I began to research how other large artists or other large actors and actresses have been in a position where they were vying for a role when someone else got it. I referred to their experiences to try to help me understand what I just experienced because it was bittersweet to say the least, Greg.
Hmm. You mentioned earlier Jason Momoa. Of course, most people know him as Aquaman. I gotta say, I love it when actors play against type, and I just saw a couple weeks ago, I saw the Minecraft movie, and I gotta say, Jason Momoa was so hilarious in that movie because he played a very comical character who hit all the pratfalls, and I was like, I had a new admiration for him after seeing the Minecraft movie because I had no expectations on that movie. Wasn't even looking forward to it, but it seemed to be the lesser of all the evils playing that I hadn't seen. And I came out not only enjoying the movie, but I was like, wow, Jason Momoa was freakingly hilarious in it. And I was wondering if you had a chance to talk to him and what was he like?
It was very touch and go conversation. We were filming on the Clemente Bridge in
Hmm.
Pittsburgh, the Roberto Clemente Bridge. It was November. Yeah, it was mid to late November, and it was cold. So he would. They did multiple takes of him running up and down the bridge through traffic. It was a high charge scene. Everybody was basically he greeted us as a group, thanking us for being there. Said a quick thing, quick couple little inspirational, things for people that are wanting to be actors or wanting to work in the film industry. So it was basically it wasn't like a mano a mano conversation, but he spoke to us as a group, and it was pleasant to be that close to Hollywood. While it was, they flew a drone. They'd fly it up the side of the bridge, bring it over to the center, lower it down, and the drone would fly up the center of the bridge on a chase shot, watching Jason Momoa running through the cops and the plane cars and such. It was a scene where he was in the tow truck running from the police, and they turn on the bridge. But anyway, it was just amazing and that was my first experience. I didn't my first experience wasn't on a small independent budget or no low budget project. It was this huge production, man. I mean, we're in the executive suites in PNC Park, and it's catered, and there's Hollywood people everywhere. And I'm scratching my head, I'm a country kid, you know, how did I end up to be this lucky? And when I realized that, I'm of the opinion nothing happens by chance. This opportunity came to kind of wet my whistle to give me that appetite to pursue more. And just like anything else in life, you pursue it, you apply it, you work towards it, and it grows. It becomes a harvest. You see what I'm saying? So it was just exciting to have that first initial experience on a Netflix production, not a small, not taken away from any small productions or anything like that. It's just the idea that that first one was big lights, big camera, big action, you know, and that's what created. And right now, I'm going to be writing short stories. I'm going to be writing scripts. I'm working with friends that are writing scripts. I'm proofreading scripts. We're going to create some stuff. Uh, yeah, there's so much opportunity even as just creative, directing, writing and directing your own films, creating your own films, casting friends. So I'm looking forward to the time I'm about to spend in the independent film industry because I'm in a rural area. If you want to make films, you make them yourself, kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to what I can bring to that, because there's a lot of small independent films that became blockbusters. And again, you never know if you ain't out there doing it. So I'm looking forward to teaming up with some Northwest Pennsylvania filmmakers, screenwriters, and actors and actresses, and making something hot. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I was going to ask, what projects do you have coming up that you're able to talk about?
Well, at the moment, like I said, I'm reading scripts for people. And there's some other things on the other side of the coin too, Greg. There's some civics opportunities, some abilities to work with at-risk youth. There's it's not all necessarily film that's going on in my life right now. There's
Hmm.
considerations of writing a book. There's considerations of becoming a public speaker of some degree. So there's it's a multifaceted thing. Lots of doors that are in front of me, and I'm just knocking at each one of them to see what I can bring, and continuing to submit for projects. Like I said, the Northeast industry is pretty much booming, almost as much as what I experienced in the Southeast. It's all happening up here too. So who knows? It's just if I progressively stay pursuant, you know, you got to paint the picture before you even get to the canvas, Greg. So if that makes sense, what I'm doing right now, I'm painting the picture of my future one day at a time, pursuing new opportunity, auditioning for larger roles, and like I said, in the meantime, creating stuff with friends and just staying in that creative vein, and the opportunities end up showing up, and it's always been that way. It's kind of like the law of attraction. You put yourself in the vein, and the things come to you. It's hard to explain. But it's very motivating. It's very sometimes it's up and down, but at the same time, I've always been pretty resilient, bounce back. Sometimes we all have mental health. We all deal with our own stuff, and so it's classic juggling. I'm a juggler, man. And I get better at this juggling thing as each day passes. I'm able to book opportunities here, make make connections here, and it's a network that continues to grow. I'm meeting some filmmakers up here, as I spoke before, and I'm just staying in that creative vein, staying connected to people like yourself. Grateful for the internet, grateful for friends in Canada. I got friends all over the globe now because of the film experiences I've had. I've been very privileged, Greg, very privileged, and looking forward to continuing to have a good attitude and pursuing. And who knows?
Well, you know what? I'm going to keep watch on this because I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you on the roster for next year, and get your updates, and hopefully you're not going to be traumatized by Sean's unicorn by then. But nonetheless, I think it's impressive what you're doing, and being part of Cobra Kai, like that's a huge deal, So, and working with Jason Momoa and various other people, um, that's a that's a great start. And I say that because it's like you got this whole horizon ahead of you, and I think big things are opening up, and there's a lot of big name actors that started out where you are, and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I think that's impressive, and I do hope you get to do more of the conventions. So gotta be fun too. So there you go. Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to plug and promote on here?
Yeah, I just want to real quick, if you guys would like, you can follow me on Facebook, Kris D Roberts, Chris with a K.
Hmm.
You can follow me on Instagram, Kris D Roberts one. I'm on TikTok. I believe it's Chris.Roberts 32 or something or another. I have my profile is me and my France sensei or fighter gi. Uh, I want to thank Sony Pictures. I want to thank Netflix. I want to thank the Florida Film family. I want to thank everybody that's been a part of the journey. Whether you gave me a couch to sleep on in Atlanta, Sri Pal, shout out Sri Pal Music on Instagram. Check him out, musician, friend of mine, put me up while I was filming in Atlanta. There's so many people. We could do a whole nother show of shout outs, but each and every one of you, you know who you are. You're in my heart and you're in this journey with me. I thank you very much.
Well, I thank you very much for coming on here and being a guest on my show. And yes, a shout out for Shawn Doucette, who recommended you, and I appreciate that. I got a private message from him, and he brought your name up, and then you messaged me. So I was like, absolutely, absolutely, and this has been great. So keep doing what you're doing. I said definitely encourage you to keep going. You know what? You never know. You never know. Maybe they'll get you in the next Bad Boys movie.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Yep.
Got high hopes. Got high hopes. Whatever is next, I look at it like, it's been a steady increase from each project to each project. There's been a growth, an upward momentum, if you will. So, I just look forward to continuing to network, get involved in phenomenal projects with great stories. At the end of the day, as an actor, as an employee, as someone with an ethic, my job is to help directors bring stories to life, you know, and to continue to, just like anything else, man. The reason why I put so many credits on my resume is because I want to learn this business. I want to learn this industry, and I think with the credits that I have, just the amount of time I've been on projects, I hope and pray that's one thing people understand, that this has been a passion. It's been a journey of a passion. Who doesn't want to be on TV? It's not a. It's hard to explain because our ego. It's not an ego thing. It's more so about self actualization. So all of this is about me becoming a better me and being able to help people along the way, whatever platform that presents itself in this industry. But until then, I continue to refine my skills and become a better asset to the entertainment industry. That's what this is all about.
Well, you could always go on to the Bad Boys set and make a deal with them and tell them that Will Smith will be allowed to slap a unicorn.
Oh, Sean.
Or Sean. Keep that unicorn out of.
The first
Oh,
time
he
I
can.
seen that, I was
Yeah. Well, Kris, I appreciate having you coming on here today, and keep in touch. Connect with me on Facebook, and absolutely. And when this is ready, I'll send it out, and you can post it wherever you please. And yeah, I'll put you on the roster for next year, and watch that 39 credits go to 139 credits. Absolutely.
That's a lot of work in a year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. God bless you and great luck to you and keep up the great work.
Appreciate you, Greg. Thanks for having me on. Thank you,
No,
all my fans and supporters, family, friends, Cobra Kai fans. You're the greatest. Till next time.
absolutely. God bless you.
Thank you, Greg.
No problem. Take care.